Hello, everyone. This is Jack, the host extraordinaire of Amazing Scale Modelers, both the Facebook and the MeWe communities. And today we have a special guest. But first, I'd just like to point out that I've always kind of tried to work this in to everybody in both communities to post the link to Round Two's YouTube channel, because every month Chad is wonderful giving us this idea as to what's available both in cars and starships. So I watch his video religiously and see what's new out there. Not to say that my budget can handle that sort of thing. And we do have the live chat open. And hello, everyone. Good morning. And if you have any comments or questions, just feel free to ask. And Jamie Hood is with us. Let's go to Jamie. Hi, Jamie.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on. It's going to be a great discussion, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Quite frankly, I just don't know where we're going to go with this.
All downhill from here.
I told the guys already know they're going to be driving. Everybody's going to be driving the conversation. I'm just going to just pay attention to the live chat and post things that are relevant.
Okay.
But I do want to start with a picture of I believe it's yours, and I was able to rip it off. See, this is not working the way I wanted it to work. There we go.
Oh.
Does that look like a familiar spot?
It's like one I see every day.
No, ones you see every day. There's been some conspiracy theories swirling about, one of which I thought was kind of silly because the Excelsior is already out, the 1,000 scales Excelsior is out. But there is that interesting little picture above it, the Akira, and I know a lot of fans of that ship, but I'm not going to plant any seeds in your mind because you already know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Anyhow, I thought I'd just start with that, and we'll go from there. Just to know, just to let you know that we are spying on you.
Well, it's interesting to see how misdirection can work in an image like that. The story about the Akira is, that's the poster we showed at the first Wonderfest we attended, and that's just a souvenir. So we don't have anything going with that. We are bringing out the Excelsior again in 2021, right after the first of the year. So I've been working on the packaging for that just this week, so that's why that was fresh up on the screen. But there are little other clues mixed in there, and some have recognize something that's underway that I can neither affirm or deny, but the visual evidence is there. So everybody can go look at my Instagram account under J Hood Creative and try and give it a closer look if they want.
I'm going to let everybody else work on that. I'm not good at that stuff.
It's that office cubicle model we've all been looking for.
Yeah, it's the Where's Waldo of model kit teases.
That's an interesting perspective of things. We were supposed to talk about Wonderfest back in March and April.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with the events, that never happened. And I guess we took a break and just kind of figured things out for ourselves. You guys getting ready for Wonderfest, no doubt, and other shows, aren't you?
Are we getting ready for one? I mean, yeah. There's no show that I know of. So when we get ready for Wonderfest, it's pretty much stop everything for a week, gather up as much as we can that we think everybody's going to be interested in, box it up, and go to the show. And that's about how long it takes to get ready. Actually, we've narrowed it down to about 2 or 3 days. But yeah, there's not a whole lot more involved in planning for a show like that as far as we're concerned. Probably merely because from the standpoint of we don't have the time to invest more into it to make a bigger, better display or anything like that. We kind of try and keep it simple, keep it consistent so we know what we're in for. and just try and like hit all the high points of the stuff that we know everybody's going to be interested to see. So, but I mean, Wonderfest has been delayed again from October to its regular time slot, end of May, early June next year. So, everything's free and clear. We'll be there just like everyone else. But you know, with the way things are going, we just never know.
Jamie, this may be a little bit too nuts and bolts, but on when you do your trade show stuff, do you print your materials in-house, or do you send those out for your stands for what goes on the table? Do you do all that in-house, or do you send that out?
Yeah, we do all that in-house. We've got a 42-inch wide printer, high quality printer. So print all of our own graphics, and if we have a little stand-up board or something like that, we'll design that in-house and print it ourselves and just mount it to a piece of foam core or whatever and bring it to the show.
So you can have the latest, the last minute information can go on there without worrying about turning it around. Yeah.
I mean, as far as that stuff, I mean, I kind of start thinking ahead to a certain degree, thinking, okay, we're going to need, we've got discovery kits coming out, but we've got very little to show as far as mock-ups or test shots or things like that. So we're going to have something. What is that something going to be? So it kind of starts percolating. And so by the time we get up to that week or so before, we actually take my ideas and put them to paper.
Well, I thought that chart you did last year, or the last show I saw, was genius, where you had the three ships laid out at what size they would be at that scale, so people could really get an idea. Because if you see it on paper and that you're asked to check, would you rather have 1,000 scale or a 2,500 scale? If you don't know how big the ship is going to be, then those numbers are meaningless. But if you see it on a chart life size, you can say, oh, I want that. I want that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the case where we found out kind of late in the game after we'd signed the Discovery license, like how big they had grown the ships. So we were surprised ourselves. And it really was a debate of, okay, now what do we do now? We've got the license. We know we're going to do kits. What size are we going to make, and what scale are we going to land on? So when we go to Wonderfest and we put stuff like that out, we generally do want feedback from people, because it really does help us make those kind of decisions. Excuse me. But yeah, there are some things where we're like, okay, we know we're going to do this. We're going to do this kit. We're going to do this re-release. But then there comes a time at certain points where it's like, okay, we've got 3 or 4 choices of what kit we could do next. Let's not kind of tip our hat and say, hey, everyone, these are the 4 kits we're thinking about doing. What should we do? And then we get an even split between the 4 as far as votes or positive feedback.
Let's do all of them. Do all of them. Yeah.
Right. And in a lot of cases, that's essentially what happens is, over time, over the years go by, we do all of them, but it's just a matter of kind of ranking them. Which do we do first? Looking at them from the standpoint of what's it going to cost us as far as tooling investment? What do we have in the budget on a given year where we can do it? So it's like one of those slide puzzles we had when you were a kid, where you had to slide the things around. So it's okay. We can do it. We have the budget. Is it the right time of year? On and on. And then the fact that we've got, with Space 1999 and Star Trek, we've got 2 of the 3 most significant, sci-fi subject licenses. So it also comes down to, okay, striking a balance between, do we want to do a Star Trek kit? Well, if we put a lot of money in the Star Trek kit, we're not going to have as much money to spend on Space 1999 this year. So it's a little bit of a back and forth as far as that goes.
Well, I mean, even the 4-wheeled models that you make they look better when you can present them in a big splashy box art, rather than seeing what the little prototype. Because many times, you're crowding around 12 other people who are looking at stuff on a table, when you could stand back and look at the big banner and see what your product is. It can't help but be more attractive that way.
That's a good point.
And speaking of kits that you've had on the books for quite a long while and finally brought out, we're all loving the shuttlecraft. All doing,
Nice.
was that more or less what you expected it to be when it came out?
I'd say it landed on target. I knew everyone had expressed that they wanted it. I was happy that I was finally able to get it out so people could get the kit in the size they want with the level of detail they're hoping for. I was thinking it through over the last year or so, at any given chance, I was asking people, okay, if we do it, can we get away without doing the interior on the first release? And almost everyone I ever talked to said, yeah, just put the kit out, just get it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably got more pushback on the fact that the interior wasn't in it than I expected. I probably should have expected it anyway. But the honest truth is we would not have been able to do the kit at all if we had to do both the exterior and interior at the same time.
Well, that brings us to a question. And it's, I don't know, I just posted. It's funny about these modelers. You talk about releasing something because it's in the pipeline and ready to be released, and they're already on the next step. This is a question that has been around ever since everybody knew that there was going to be a release of the shuttlecraft. So, anything on that? I mean, is there any thoughts on that?
We've got the whole thing, all the CAD's done. We've got everything we need except for the money in the budget to cut the tooling.
That's what you were just explaining. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not that we're never going to do it. We'll do it eventually. It's just a matter of time.
Would you do that? Would you do it like you did the smooth saucer as a separate release by itself in a package with no decals, no frills, or would you reissue the whole thing with an interior?
That's a good question. We could consider doing both, but it would be like to do just the interior parts as like a one-time release, and it might not be as big and fancy. Maybe it's a bagged accessory kit or something like that.
I'm just thinking of all the people who didn't glue their roofs in because they know they could slide it back out and put the interior in and slide the roof back on.
That's not going to happen. You would have to have an unbuilt kit on the shelf because there's no way to slide what will be the interior into it.
Okay.
And I guess if you could take the whole back end off and the roof, there's a slim possibility, but I've not tried it. I just know that there's very little room between the inner wall parts and what the outer wall parts are.
Well, I'll be happy to volunteer if you need a test subject. I have an empty shell that I've built that I'd be happy to try out.
Well, we've got a chip for AI. We'll just implant it in Lou and see what happens. We'll just see what happens. I've watched maybe not as close as I should have watched Lou's interior scratch build, but he went through some interesting iterations on that as far as that goes. So I think
one of the things that came to mind when you brought up the idea of okay, we bring out a kit and then everybody is looking for the next best thing. That drives me nuts.
Oh, sure.
We hear for years and years, bring out a 350 scale Katinga kit. And man, we worked ourselves to death on that thing. And we bring it out and say, here it is. We're going to do it. Aren't you excited? Yeah. When are we going to get a 350 Reliant?
Yeah. It's that line from the beginning of the the Incredibles when I just saved the city. Can't you just stay saved for a while? It's like every time I'm saving the city, I have to go out and save it again.
Yeah. I mean, if it was up to me, if I had all the money in the world, we wouldn't have any more kits to do. And what fun would that be?
All the money in the world and all the time too. Yeah. Phil, you had something?
Well, there was only one thing I was going to ask initially was I've noticed that the area coming away from the shuttlecraft. The Ares from 2001, that's sort of in the pipeline, but I've not seen a pricing for it or anything yet. So
you're asking the wrong guy.
yeah, I was just wondering whether you'd heard if there was a pricing that had been fixed or not, and if it hasn't, then that's fair enough.
You'd have to talk to the guys at Mobius.
Mobius, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
good grief! Yes, I'm talking to the wrong person.
You
Yes.
made a critical error.
Yes,
You are the weakest link.
I'll get my coat.
I told him somebody from Mobius is going to be
Okay.
here. So.
Yeah. Oh,
He was
dear.
wondering where the shuttlecraft conversation was going.
Yeah, my apologies.
You are the weakest link. Goodbye.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I'll shut up there for a moment, and I'll think of something else.
Apparently, there's a question here, though. They're just making. I don't know. Can Model Shop? Can you? He's saying 350 scale refit. He probably wants a re-release. Of course, I would be fond of that too, even though I've got one right back behind me. I love that.
He's saying that the refit NX01. So the NX01 would be the enterprise version, and the refit had the secondary hull added underneath it.
Yes.
When we did the reissue of the NX350 NX01, it did not perform all that well, and I think part of it is that there are problems in that kit that are not easy for us to fix, and they're not easy for modelers to fix. I think that kind of dragged the sales down on that. That's a kit that I would like to eventually get to the point where we can really take a hard look and see if we can address the nacelle sagging, the way everything fits. It just doesn't go together all that great. So I hope to be able to do that eventually. And if we do that, if we put that kind of money into it to fix the problems that are in it and it sells well, then we can consider doing the refit edition parts to go with it.
Okay. Yeah, there's also the decals for the strongbacks. Let's see. Around 2 Polaroid's planning on reprints of the Aztec decal sets. The ones in the second release, the Saucer and the rest, strongbacks are still around, but the demand for the regular Aztecs is out there.
So is that for the refit?
Yes, he's not saying. He's not saying.
I think they're talking about. Oh, wait a minute.
Well, the strongbacks, I would think it would be the refit. I would guess.
It's the Aztec decals for the Excelsior.
Refit. Yeah, he specified refit.
Is he saying refit? Oh, my apologies.
The refit kit we put out now, the motion picture version of the Enterprise, has I think 2 or 3 versions of strongbacks in the decal sheet.
Right.
We don't include all the Aztecs, but there are different color schemes for the strongbacks in there.
Yeah. Okay.
What about, could I ask Jamie, what about Star Trek Picard? I mean, there were a couple of ships in that. I know it's not as popular, but I think something like La Serena, the main ship that they fly.
Okay, so here's where I have to admit my ignorance, because I've not been able to watch Picard yet.
Right. Okay.
So we did talk to the Star Trek people before Picard actually went into production, and I think this is when we were discussing the Discovery license, when we were working on that deal, and we asked them, are there going to be any capital ships or hero ships in Picard, and they kind of said no. And I've not had a chance to watch it, so I don't know to what degree there are reoccurring ships in it.
There's basically just La Serena, which is the main sort of transport that they use. There are other ships appear in it, but it's the main one I think that anyone would be interested in. But I can't think of anything else. And if anyone else has watched it, can you think of anything that's... It's not that type of show.
Yeah, and Star Trek is dividing each of their new shows up into a separate license. So,
Oh wow!
At least that's what they're doing now. Since they've been purchased by Viacom, since they've merged,
Right.
Maybe they'll handle things differently. I don't know. I'm sure they're out to get as much money as they can, however they can.
I think the popularity of Star Trek Lower Decks has been surprising.
Yeah,
And
I haven't
there are
seen
ships in
that
that.
either.
Okay. It's very well made, very very funny, very very much an homage to old Trek. I don't know if there's anyone here seen it.
I watch it. I watch it.
No. I just think it would be funny because the little yellow submarine was actually a cartoonish type kit. I can see below decks model kits coming out looking the same.
Yeah, well, the main ship, the USS Cerritos, would work. It's there. It's not impossible.
I would like to see what a real version of that would look like. Jamie,
have you seen the latest episode, Lou?
Yes.
Which has that sequence of very much.
Yes, that's Jamie's not here to hear us talk about television.
It's a homage to Star Trek: The Motion Picture. The scene where the Enterprise was revealed. It's a loving recreation. Hilarious. It's brilliant. It is excellent.
Jamie, touching on what you said, does that mean your Enterprise kit now will be rebranded as Strange New Worlds Enterprise, or will it stay Discovery Enterprise?
Well, it's not a subject that's been broached at this point. It'll continue as a Discovery Enterprise until. Okay, since it appeared in Discovery, we're always going to be able to offer it under that branding, as far as I know, as far as I'm concerned. For us to make the jump to a Brave New Worlds license, if that's also another separate license, we're going to have to see a lot of other ships involved that are going to be worth kitting, because every time we sign one of these licenses, it's so expensive. We can't rely on just doing one or two ships. We have to have a line we're going to be able to produce.
But they can't come in and yank that from Discovery and say you can't do that because it's got its own series now.
I mean, they can try and do whatever they want.
Gotcha. But you've started those discussions.
No, we haven't.
Okay.
We even on the front end, when we start talking to licensors, like, well, I guess Star Trek in particular, because they're the only ones we're dealing with at this point, where they haven't produced a show yet. They might have started production art. They might have started some designs. Writers might be in a writer's room trying to figure out what the show's going to be, what the stories are going to be about. But at that point, they hardly know what they are going to do. We come in and say, okay, what are you going to do for the show? And they have to be extremely vague.
Right.
They can't show us a thing. So it's almost, we can't make a judgment call ourselves because we don't see anything before you guys do. So if a trailer comes out and there are 10 amazing looking starships, we're going to be on the phone with them. So.
Yeah, I was just thinking of how Discovery was being promoted. They would leak something, and of course that got everybody in a feeding frenzy of sorts. And even then they weren't, I got the impression even then they weren't sure even what the costumes would look like or who the characters will be even.
I mean, if you look at the design of the ship they showed in those really early teaser things they did,
yeah,
and I mean, if you look at the model of Discovery, there's a seam in the nacelles where they tacked on the back end of the nacelles because they had been a lot shorter in those previous scenes.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the ship is relatively the same design. There might be some tweaks here or there.
All right.
But, yeah. So once we got the license and we're like, yeah, the ship is, this long. And we're like, what? How did that happen?
Well, looks like Steve has something to say about the Excelsior.
Do you not have any in stock from last time? That would be my question. Because that was a strange case where we over-ordered on that, and I would have thought we'd still have some in stock. If we don't, then yeah, we'll go back to press with them.
I would think decals wouldn't be such a big tool up as a model kit would be, I would imagine.
Yeah, and that's why I try and do them as much as I can.
Right. Right. Gotcha. He says he just has a few. He just has a few. Yeah. There seems to be a shortage. I wonder why. What could it be? Uh, Ken asked an interesting question. He has the old TOS bridge, and there's a whole bunch of aftermarket parts that make that kit actually a very interesting kit to build in and make it a challenge. But here he is with the Enterprise D.
Yeah, we've gotten requests for that before, and it's a creature where we brought out a reissue of the bridge. It did not do well, so I can't go to Matt and say, "Hey, we've got a great history of bringing out a bridge kit." So the thing that the TOS bridge has going for it, it's got a lot of interchangeable parts. Honestly, I would like to retool it more accurately, because I know I can repop a lot or repress a lot of the parts, so the tooling hit is a little bit lower.
Very modular.
With Enterprise D, everything around the whole thing is unique. It's a left side and a right side, so there's no economy in the tooling there. So it's a long shot.
Okay. All right. I agree, because that's a diorama. I don't even think of it as a model kit in a traditional sense, like a car, a boat, a starship. It's a model diorama, and that's pretty much what it is. And then, of course, once you come out with one of those, then it's a matter of putting figures in it too. Then that becomes a question.
Yeah. One of the things when you start talking about a bridge kit is, okay, what's the viewing angle? When you display it, how are you going to show it? Because how are we used to seeing the bridge when we watch the show? We're used to watching it from the viewpoint of the view screen looking into the back of the bridge. So when you display it, is that how you want to display it, or do you want to do a side angle so you can see the view screen as well to see what all the characters are reacting to? So it's a bit of a question you have to ask yourself as you're planning something like that.
Well, yeah, TOS had stock camera angles, so they basically, the bridge pretty much looked the same. Where the camera sat most of the time was, I only saw maybe twice. One time when Spock and Kirk were walking around the perimeter of the bridge is the only time I really saw it. Steve said there is a demand for the bridge. I would imagine for the D that you're saying there, Steve. Back to the decals thing.
Yes, I've promised that for a long time, and I need to follow through with doing the 48 paneling decals for the Eagles.
All right.
Could I ask, as a commercial exercise, has the Galileo been good or bad, and without industrial details here? I mean, has it been pleasantly surprised, or has it just been as expected, or in terms of
compared to other, high profile releases, I guess it's performing as well as we would expect.
Good.
With all these kits, we can't look at the first initial flood of the market of the kits, because that's what happens. We get a big gush of interest at the beginning. Everybody that's been looking for this kit their whole life, they finally get it. They go and buy 2, 3, 6 copies, whatever, and then
if they're in the US, not the UK. and it still hasn't arrived here. I mean, it just seems to take. I know the current pandemic, everything else is affecting things, but I think realistically now it's going to be November sometime before, unless you order from the States.
Yeah.
Which a few people have done, but waiting for it to appear with our suppliers here. And my usual gripe, I won't go into that. So.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's not been out for long enough for us to really say. I guess that's my point. Yeah. We have to look at the sales history over a series of, at least a year, probably 2 years to get a good feel on how well it's doing and how well it will do long term.
I mean, I would like to have two of them, definitely. I think Santa Claus will be bringing one of them, but we shall see what happens.
Well, it's almost kind of funny that you bring that up, Liam, because whenever the Revell of Germany came out with the 2009 Enterprise, you were gloating that us Americans were starving for it because it wasn't being released here.
It doesn't happen often, but very sometimes we're lucky.
Oh yeah, well, you made that time worthwhile.
I must
because what you said though is that there's no distributorship in the UK or in Europe.
Well, there is. It's a company called Amarang who Phil will be more than familiar with, and they. How can I be diplomatic? I cannot understand some of their commercial decisions. How they structure pricing and so on is insane. You'll get something. Revell Europe kits are very keenly priced, but anything from the US or Japan that they distribute, it's just you can basically double the price. It's just insane. And
Well,
it must affect sales. I know it's a sort of a false economy. They're trying to make a maximum profit, but they would probably sell more if the prices were closer to the US prices. But
well, I don't think you would have an issue with, say, okay, the shuttle kit runs roughly $50 US, and what would that be in pounds?
in pounds at the minute, that would be 42.
42.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't balk if it was an extra £5.
No, but it's £70.
75 is doubling. It would make it stupid.
Yeah.
I agree that.
It's the logic, and Jamie and I have had this discussion 18 times. He's fed up listening to me, but if they could give me the rationale, okay. But the rationale to me just seems to be greed. But and then there's only, I mean, the range of suppliers in the UK has reduced down from what it was. The number of model shops that we have now, like the same in the US. It's the big internet distributors that are the bulk sales. I don't know how many kits would be coming to the UK. I dare say it's in the hundreds, not thousands. But I know quite a few people who want the Galileo, and I've been asked to build it for a couple of people. I might do that. I'm getting very wary of doing any sort of build this as a favor type things. I'm avoiding them if I can. But I'm looking forward to getting a Galileo in some respect. I don't, maybe. I noticed the James Bond line, with the shuttle appearing. I mean, is that only going to be re-releases? It's not going to be anything new.
No, we just reused the Lindbergh tooling for that, the Lindbergh space shuttle.
I know. There are certain James Bond subjects that Little Nelly, which is the auto gyro, it hasn't been available for a long time. But I know that's an Airfix kit, and I don't know if it's available from anyone else. But it's one of those kits that just hasn't appeared for a long time. I don't know if Phil can think of anything else in that line, but
okay, I'm right. I just had a thought. With me.
I mean, your licensing, everything that you distribute has been US licenses. You've never looked at getting a license from, a kit manufacturer from another part of the world.
We do it on occasion. We're not opposed to it. We've worked out deals recently with Italeri to run some of their 1/24th scale semis and things like that. So I'm not going to say it's out of question.
Okay.
At that point, it's a matter of getting the right people talking to each other and getting pricing that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I suppose there's one thing I was wondering was, I know you've done like a lot of the Space 1999 things, the Eagles in various scales. What are the chances of anything associated with UFO being done? I mean,
Yeah.
or any of the Jerry Anderson series.
or any of the giant,
any of it,
but
'cause they're so popular.
but- yeah, but particularly UFO, I think because it has been so underrepresented, and anything that's previously come out has been like rather toy-like, rather than mainstream models. I was wondering if you had anything in, you had any discussions going on, or were aware of anything going on with that.
I've considered it. I've considered all the other Jerry Anderson properties to see if maybe maybe we could get all of them in kind of one agreement. That it just comes down to, again, we've got a limited budget as far as what we can tool. So if we were to attack that, Star Trek and Space 1999 is going to suffer for it. So until we get to the point where we can start investing more into new tools and have the manpower to help manage the development of more new kits, it's just not something that I'm anxious to go after, just because of we're limited in what we can do already. So
yeah.
And also, I mean, in the U.S., when I talk to casual like comic book fans, or other guys my age that are into sci-fi or geeky stuff, they know Star Wars, they know Star Trek. I can mention Space 1999 and they recognize it. If I say UFO, they might not know it, just because, I mean, there's just that level of exposure that the property has had. With Space 1999, I'm a bit surprised that people remember it. I mean, I remember watching it as a kid. Other guys I talked to that are into this stuff, they remember watching it as a kid. But to have kept up with it, you would have had to search for the VHSs. It was never re-aired. And it's the same to, a greater degree with shows like UFO. Thunderbirds, I think, would have more recognizability. That's for sure. But a lot of product that's been done for those kids. And because of the size of those vehicles, it's hard to get a more to pick one scale and do all the ships in a comparative scale, which we like to do a lot of times. My daughter's going to come join the festivities. She's got some donuts.
Symphony of Oz. Somebody made the comment about Dirk said the UFO stuff will be great, but I think the time has passed on those. And then Steve chimed in and talked about the Area 51 UFO. You already have that tool, do you not?
So the Area 51 UFO it's currently in the Lindbergh Tooling Bank, and we are reissuing that in January. And it's based on the real Area 51 UFO. So if you believe in UFOs, this is the one that the United States government has in a bunker in the desert. So it wasn't until we started digging into what is this kit, we didn't realize it was based on something. I thought it was completely made up, another Lindbergh kit that had just been that had just been tooled up back in the day. But come to find out, it was tooled by testers. Testers worked with the guy's name is Bob Omar or something like that. I can't remember offhand exactly, but this the guy that he goes out and he speaks. He's kind of a timid guy as far as like going out and speaking publicly, but he claims to have worked in what we call Area 51, where he had hands-on, or not necessarily hands-on, but close contact with alien spacecraft, and they were trying to re-engineer or back engineer or reverse engineer the technology. Sorry.
That's okay. It's your house,
Going after Daddy's toys here.
You're
Well,
just
no, those are hers. She got those at the comic book shop out of the ball machine.
You wait till my cat show up looking for treats.
here's an interesting thread. Is Ken said like to see the kid at Space Station of 2001, and I'm like,
Yeah.
so would I, Ken.
Yeah.
And then Mark says, "Gee, you have a wish list, don't you?" I think I don't know.
Long as your arm, I think. Long as your arm.
I think it was some kind of tie-in with the Pan Am Clipper ship, I suppose. Okay. Here, I'm glad we got somebody else besides Sci-Fi here. There's a point when Sci-Fi does get too old.
More current Sci-Fi versus old Sci-Fi. So what is current Sci-Fi?
Well, I think Supernatural. He came out with a car I have yet to get.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is more of a current, I guess it will be in the genre of sci-fi or fantasy or horror or whatever you want to put that in.
They may be talking about Expanse, Jack.
An Expanse? Yeah, there's the Expanse. That'd be great. My favorite show, one of my favorite shows, The Expanse.
So I'll be honest and say it's not something we've considered. But maybe it's something we should. But again, it comes down to splitting that tooling budget. Do you want to see a ship from Expanse? And again, it comes down to we also have to be able to do more than one subject. So it has to be maybe the hero ship and a enemy or two enemies, enough to be able to earn dollars off of more than one product. One license we did seriously look into was the Orville. I'm a big fan of the show, and I imagine a lot of you guys are too.
Oh yeah.
So we looked into that, but again, it came down to we knew we'd do the Orville probably in 2 scales, and what else would we do? Maybe one of the Krill ships, but we didn't want it to be a case where we did kits like they did with Star Trek Voyager, where the Voyager performed well for Revell, and the other ships that they did, didn't do that well.
Oh, no love for the Kazon torpedo.
I don't think that was round. That wasn't round 2's decision, was it?
Well, no, that was Revell's. So
that's right.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get us into that position though.
Well, certainly, that certainly is, and there's also mention of Buck Rogers, and sci-fi like 1999 UFO Buck Rogers.
Someone mentioned Flash Gordon as well. I don't know whether that was the old
Flash Gordon,
the very old Flash Gordon, or whether it was the
merely old,
the merely rather old, as opposed to the incredibly ancient.
Yes, the black and white old versus the color old. Jamie, I only have one last question. I go to the big box stores lately, and I go to the toy section, and I see all these poor, sad toys that are tied into movies that were never released because of the pandemic. And I'm wondering if was there anything in round 2's stable that you were hoping to have brought out by now, but because of one thing or another, it still sits on a shelf, or and as a tangent to that, has the pandemic been good for the modeling industry for you? Have sales gone up? Because in my experience, people are staying home and making models.
Sales have gone up. I mean, we've definitely seen a significant bump. I mean, it's not like huge, like a huge, breakout success or anything, but we've had noticeable growth this year, and I think it is because, like you said, people are staying home, and model building is a stay-at-home hobby. So I think people that got out of it might have come back. Definitely the guys that are in it probably did more. I'm not sure that we did much as far as growing the younger generations to bring them up into the hobby. As far as was there anything that we left on the table that we weren't able to do because of the pandemic? No, our marching orders were get everything planned out on time.
Mhm.
And that was purely a survival instinct that we have to have product out there to, keep the doors open. So luckily, as far as getting stuff finished for the end of the year, I think this year we were in the best shape that I remember being in, where there wasn't a whole lot of scrambling in the creative department to handle deadlines and things like that. I think we've got one product. I think the pre-built Enterprise we're doing, I think that will probably slip out of 2020 and into 2021. But yeah, things have gone well.
Okay. All right. Steve has this question. Halloween's coming up, so this is a thought.
Yeah. We'll do the last Haunted Manor kit the beginning. Well, I think it's in Q1. It's in Q1 or early Q2 next year.
Okay. And he also asked about any vintage things.
What else is left? We're doing wacky races.
Okay.
I mean, we do have like the $6 million man, but licensing for that is a little bit difficult. The kits are a little bit, they're collectible, but are they great? I don't know. So.
Yeah, Dirk is a car builder like I sometimes indulge in too. You couldn't speak too much about cars, can you?
I kind of have a vague knowledge of kind of what we've got planned. There are actually a few car kits I would like to start working on that are pop culture related. So
so you want to do pop? Well, it makes sense. Like I have the Steve McQueen Bullet. That's a Revell kit, I think.
Yeah,
that's a Revell kit. But I did see Chad come up with the snap kit for the Mach 5 from Speed Racer. I still got to get a Speed Racer kit, and I kind of missed out. They all, the original pop, not the snap that is out right now. If there was a difference between them, I don't even know.
The new ones are pretty much a straight ratio of the last time we did it.
Okay.
We'll be doing. There's also a glue version that we'll be doing in 2021 as well.
I see. And yeah, Dirk. I think the Mustang is really a Revell thing. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't know. Round 2 have any Mustang kits?
We've got a few, and I've talked to John. I think we've got a 67 that. When I say John Gradzula is the guy that plans all of our car kits. And we've got a Mustang that's sold really well for us over the years, but it's an MPC kit and the tooling's kind of a mess. And we've been trying to convince him, let's retool it. Let's, do a better version of it and, engineer it so we can do a Mach 5 or not a Mach 5. What do they call them? Anyway, do a Cobra version.
Yeah, no, it's a Mach 5. It's a fastback Mach 5.
Yeah.
From MPC, and he believes it's AMT. Well, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So kits like that, where there's a possibility that we'll go back and retool some of those.
Okay.
And I'm to the point now where I'm trying to champion a few more popular car kits. I think John has his tastes, but he also has knowledge of the market as well, the car modeling market. So he knows what guys have seen too much of, and he's trying to not to offer more of that. So, but I think there are some car kits that are probably underrepresented in the wide model kit market that would be worth tooling up, and I'm just trying to identify what those might be.
Mm.
There hasn't been a mention of plans for the future directly of Star Trek and some of their kits. There's nothing you can hint at.
Mobius is coming into the picture a lot in this discussion. Interesting. Battlestar Galactica kits. Because I don't know anything about Mobius, so I'm kind of speaking.
I know people that work there, but I've not talked to them in years.
Yeah, okay. They never did a Cylon base or a heavy raider, which is interesting. I was able to get a couple of Vipers. I did get the bigger kits though, but there was like the Colonial one would have been an interesting kit, but I heard it was about this tiny. So that's a different make. I don't know. What else did I think? There was a question earlier. I did see Chad present a pre-made Discovery model.
Yeah, that's the Eagle Musk model, I thought. But no.
It's ours. It's our Discovery 120 or 2500 scale Discovery.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but there was the question earlier was something on a larger scale.
Just taking bring you back possibly. I'm just on an hour.
No, we don't have anything planned at the moment, but it's definitely something we'll still continue, and part of that has to do with the continued interest in Discovery as well.
Uh-huh.
I can tell you that the 1000 scale Enterprise from Discovery has done really well for us. So if that's any indication, if we would get the same response to 1000 scale Discovery as we're getting to that ship, it's something we'll really strongly consider.
Yeah, it was a larger Discovery Enterprise because I thought the Enterprise stirred a lot more desire to build it than perhaps the other one. I don't watch the show. What am I talking about?
Well, I think that the design of the Enterprise that they came up with for the show, stop please, did strike a nice balance as far as the design goes. I don't want to say that they gave it fan service because there are a few things in it that I think fans of the original series Enterprise and the refit didn't necessarily like holes in the pylons and things like that. But I think they gave enough design cues and nods from all the other versions of the ship, kind of gracefully blending them all together. So they presented a ship that our market appreciates more than the design we saw in the J.J. Abrams movies and things like that. So I think, and conversely, I think people saw elements in the Enterprise design that they liked that weren't in the USS Discovery ship design. It was very long and sleek and didn't seem to fit in to what they're used to seeing as far as Star Trek ships goes.
Right. The current Discovery ship is what, a 2500 scale?
Yeah.
How in inches? How long is that kit actually?
It's 12 inches long.
Wow. They're talking about 1000 scale Discovery.
Yeah, so 1000 scale. I'm trying to remember that board that Lou mentioned earlier. I think it's like 38 inches long or something like that.
Yeah, it's a big kit.
It's pretty nuts.
But it's all engine. I mean, it's all in the cell.
Yeah. One second, guy.
Well, I think that last time we talked, we did talk about scaling, and Steve is like, what goes into the decisions about like, well, the refit came out, and that's the famous 34, 36 inches long, and it was real good. It was popped, 3 or 4 times, if not more, and then came out TOS and all the rest. What was the decision? How do you decide that?
As far as,
yeah, well, you're talking about a 2500 scale Discovery and now 1000 scale. what was the, because I remember going a couple of years ago before anything was, you did put out that big display there for actual size. Which would you like? And of course I picked the big one, but it turns out the 2500 scale came out and not 1000 scale. But what was the leading decision? Was it the tooling? Was it the amount of material, or the cost of the kit eventually for retail?
So we went with the 2500 scale because I saw less of a risk, because at that point we hadn't even seen, we didn't know that there was an Enterprise involved. We had seen the Shinzu, we had seen Discovery, we'd seen Klingon ships. So and this is like when we were first planning, when we were thinking about getting the license, what could we do? So it was a matter of, okay, do we go 1000 scale because that's what we think is the most popular scale in our lineup? And I'll also say this: when we first started looking at into the license, we weren't given the lengths, the sizes of the ships we were dealing with. So we thought we'd be able to do like an 18-inch long Discovery, but there's no scale that works with that. So that was kind of involved. So ultimately it came down to, okay, do we want to go big, put all our tooling dollars in one large Discovery kit and hope it works? Because like I said, the Discovery design did not get an overwhelmingly positive response.
Right.
It really mixed 50-50.
Right.
So we decided, okay, instead of doing that, we'll do a lineup. We'll do 2 or 3 kits in the smaller scale, and 2500 scale, put those out and see how they do. And then if we get, a strong enough response to those, we can do bigger ones later on.
Well, Dirk said from a 12-inch to a 1000 scale would make it 38 inches. That would be by far the largest kit, that by 2 or 3 inches of the other 350 kits from the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, well,
and who's got 38 inches worth of bookshelf to put that on?
I told Lou he's got to build an addition to his addition.
Yeah. Well, it would be long, but it wouldn't be so very wide. It's more long. It's more like a battleship type of model where it's long and skinny. It wouldn't necessarily be all that deep. Like the refit is just, big in every beautiful proportion. And this would be like a big submarine model where it's long, but it's not very tall and not very deep.
Right.
Okay. All right. Jim, I'm sure you're begging to bump in here and get a question in.
Well, the one thing that's always been an interest on my side, this is going back into the cars a bit, is something's underrepresented, and I know there's a lot of people enthusiastic, is older cars, like we're talking about pre-1920s as far as the model cars. I mean, you see a few Model Ts, but the underrepresented as far as Chevs, Oldsmobile, Cadillacs, all those are not represented. There used to be lots of models of those out, but now they're rare and few in between.
So I would guess it represents the market for that era of car.
Yeah.
So muscle cars of the 50s and 60s, almost every car modeler wants to work in that area. They'll stretch out of it. They'll do earlier cars or later cars, obviously, too. But the meat and potatoes of it is in that area. So to what extent do they want to go that far back? I guess I don't know enough about the car modeling market to be able to make that kind of call.
Mm-hmm.
I know we do have a bunch of pyro tools that do like early turn of the century style cars, 1900s era cars.
Yeah.
And we've got a pretty wide lineup of them, but I think they're 32nd scale. So again, if they're not 25th scale, is there a market for them?
Yeah.
Jamie, with regard to the 3D printing world and everything that's happening there, I know in Europe, in the Ukraine, and in, I can't think of where the other country is, but certainly in the Czech Republic, for example, there's a lot of small companies now that are appearing. They're doing limited run aircraft, for example. They'll do a kit and there's only 1,000 of it, and they're finding a market that's working for them by doing not rare stuff, but stuff that maybe wouldn't fill a big chunk of the market. You never looked at doing short run stuff like 1,000 special edition or something, or?
No, and that primarily comes down to, even though you would 3D print the parts instead of doing a hard tooling, there's still expense in doing the CAD work, getting the design work done, research, development.
The Ukraine company is called Dora Wings, and they just seem to have hit a section of the market and the aircraft side of things that they're bringing out. The one I bought recently was the Amelia Earhart aircraft, the Lockheed, from 1932, whatever it was. And it's a superb kit, but it's apparently they only did 1,500 of it. They made 1,500 kits, but they've made the money back on the design work, whatever they had to do. It's just a different approach. Rather than trying to sell 50,000 kits, they're prepared to spend the time and sell 1,500 at a premium, perhaps a premium price.
Right.
But when you buy the kit, you're getting photo etch, very well designed, a great set of decals. The whole thing's been done properly, but it's just a different approach commercially.
Well, and
I would call that boutique
something
model.
like that. I don't know who's involved in that company, and it's a matter of, is it a handful of guys that are doing this, where they know what they're looking at, they're designing it themselves. If it's a team of 5 or 6 guys in this company, I could see that working for them.
Yeah, but I think they are quite. All of these companies are quite small scale, but it's the fact that there seems to be a lot of them appearing now in Europe for some reason. I don't know. Well, it's because the technology's moved on to the point where they can do make the molds themselves somehow. This is a plastic kit. It is not a 3D printed kit.
Okay,
so it's plastic.
They're building short run tooling. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's working for them. And I mean, I got the kit on speculation. I wasn't sure how good, but it was excellent. Really, really superb. Not what I expected at all. And the price was fair for what it was.
Interesting.
But they're certainly they're adding to their range at a crazy rate. You think, how many kids could they bring out in 1 year? But they just seem to be one a month almost. So however they're doing it, so.
We have a hard time with our guys keeping up with 2 kits a month. So
yeah, well, I mean, hold on, I'll show you the kit 1 second.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we got to have you back, Jamie.
It's definitely been too long.
We'd like to give the rest of your Saturday back to you, even though we can monopolize the whole day. That wouldn't be fair to you. But certainly we'll try to wrap this up. And we're going to invite you back, of course, if you're willing, because I know everybody here would be willing too. And I'd like to put a message out there for all watching, either on live or replay. If you have any ideas on who we can tap and say, who can we have on to talk about the hobby? So go ahead there, Liam.
I mean, it was 148 scale. And it's a superb detailed kit. It's got everything. The decals were superb on it. A fully detailed engine. There's an interior, although it doesn't really show up at all on that screen at all. But for what it was, I was very, very happy with the kit. Very accurate as well, because I referenced the Smithsonian have this on the real version on display, and they had a set of photographs. Accuracy was perfect on it. But I just thought, well, it's something that could be looked at from your point of view, that there is a market for limited aircraft, limited cars, limited spacecraft, but there's a different way of going about it.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be in touch with you to get more information on them, so I can take a closer look.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think Liam asked a question earlier that I didn't address, as far as like what What do we have in the works? What do we have coming? And I'm not going to give any specifics, but we do have. Let's see. I'm working on a Star Trek, a new 1,000 scale Star Trek kit that will be out hopefully in the first half of next year. I've got
that wouldn't have been the one that was sitting to the left hand side of your desk.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I'm doing RFQs for another Star Trek kit in 350 scale. I'm doing an RFQ is request for quote. That's where I put details together for the factory to try and get pricing out of them, and then we can see if we can afford it or not. A Space 1999 ship, and I'm also currently working on another Space 1999 kit that would come out again, hopefully in the first half of next year. So we've always got irons in the fire.
Yeah.
We've got stuff coming, and hopefully by the end of the year, I'm sure by the end of the year I'll have either mock-ups or test shots of the kits that I'm working on right now, developing right now, to be able to show what's going to come in the first half of next year.
Okay. All right. We got to have you back there, Jamie. It was a very good discussion. Like I said, these guys knew how to carry on. I didn't have to do much of anything. And of course, I'd like to thank everybody on the chat that contributed questions. Steve, I'm going to talk to you, just leaving it out there if you're still watching. And also Dirk and Mark and Mike and Gearhead. I'm not sure what your name is. Dirk showed by. Ken. There are a lot of folks who stopped by to say hello, as well as NASCAR. Can't forget him. He was the first one to ask some interesting questions here. So I'd like to thank everybody who is watching, and of course, leave your comments on this channel if you have any ideas that you want to see. Certainly, we have the resources and the folks here that can participate in getting some people in here, because I think these discussions are important to excite us and also be able to perpetuate the hobby. I think that's what we need to do, because building a hobby is relieve stress from the world, and certainly we can resolve a lot more world problems if we sniff more glue. So that's my opinion, and solely my own, and I wasn't paid to say that. Thank you, Jamie, so much for stopping by and giving us an insight of what you do. We're gonna hey. So far, we know that Wonderfest is still on, and we'll get you in maybe first handful of months of next year, perhaps. How's that?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, very good. And this is your host for Amazing Scale Modelers, Hobby Bench. I don't even know the name of our show, because we only do it once a month. We do it on the first Saturday, or at least try to. Holidays aside, we'll follow up the next Saturday if it's a holiday, but every first Saturday of the month, we do a show like this to be more informative about the hobby and maybe get some more techniques, more details, and all this sort of thing. So thank you for all watching, and happy modeling, everyone. Good day.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Have fun swimming the castle.
End.